and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm, and we welcome to the show, while Ann is away,
Merryn Johns, Editor-in-Chief of Queer 40. Hello, everybody. Happy New Year, and Happy New Year to you, Andy. It's lovely to be back.
I call it the happier New Year, and after last night, it's a little more happy. Not what's going on today at the Capitol, but the wins in the Georgia Senate race. I mean, I feel like I went through the whole election. Well, we'll talk about it, but they now put the federal LGBT rights bill and a whole range of progressive initiatives and appointments on the table in the Senate. That's great.
Another thing we can talk about today is the COVID pandemic is continuing to rage, almost unchecked in this country, but there is some hope with vaccines being deemed safe for HIV positive people.
Trump, aided by anti-LGBT bigots in his coterie, in his attempted coup, but he's not wasting any time. He's using every hour to implant more anti-LGBT initiatives into the government structure.
And we have two more out gay appointments made to the Biden cabinet, significant ones too.
Right. We lost a host of prominent community members over the holidays. A Black lesbian pioneer, the lesbian author who challenged how women viewed their bodies, the feminist designer who was the survivor of the late Lesley Gore, a world-famous fashion designer, the actor who played Mouse on Tales of the City, a veteran gay activist in Scotland, and an award-winning TV writer. I'm going to tell you about all of them.
Some very tragic losses this week. Over in England, we have the Queen honouring an out lesbian, long-serving Member of Parliament.
The Queen. We just have to say the Queen. We don't have to say which Queen. Greece has gotten its first out gay minister in government.
And in Uganda, we have a lawyer who was very active in LGBTQ rights, has been snatched in a restaurant for money laundering and other malicious charges.
But we do start, which everybody is, well, at least everybody I know is celebrating these Georgia victories. And it did feel, watching it last night, like I was going through the whole election process with Trump. Oh my God, it looks like Trump's going to win again. And then, all these votes came in from the cities and elected. Now, this is just, gobsmacking for me to see a Black man, Raphael Warnock, and a Jew, John Ossoff, being sent to the United States Senate as Democrats from Georgia. And this changes so much in the equation for everything that we care about.
So that's the first, so Reverend Warnock is the first Democrat in 20 years and the first Black man ever to the Georgian Senate? That's what I think.
At least elected, after Reconstruction. Senators in this country used to be elected by state legislatures. Mm-hmm. And up until, I think, around, I want to say 1910, something like that, then we had direct election of senators. But the legislatures just used to pick them. So after Reconstruction, a lot of Black senators and Congress members were sent from the South to the Congress. So there were a lot in those days. And then they were crushed by Jim Crow, white supremacy, all that kind of stuff, raised its ugly head again. But yeah, of course, and Raphael Warnock is not just, any Black man. He's the pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, which is Dr. King's church. And he's terrific. And, people, when I first heard about him, I said, oh, what's he going to do on choice? What's he going to do on gay rights? He's strong on them.
Mm-hmm, that's wonderful. When I last checked in on John Ossoff, I saw that he had the lead of 50.2% over David Perdue at 49.8%. So it's pretty close, but it's looking like with 98% of the reporting in, it's going to be Ossoff's victory. Is that right?
And the votes that are coming in from Democratic precincts, and they're going to make it higher. He has to get beyond 0.5% to avoid a recount. But that looks like it's going to happen, and they're already talking. Chuck Schumer from New York, not the most liberal guy, but he is our senator. But he's going to be the majority leader, and Mitch McConnell is going to be the minority leader. And Kamala Harris is going to break the ties in the Senate. That's how the Democrats get power there. But, seriously, what this means is, so Chuck Schumer is going to control what comes to the floor of the Senate. So important, especially for Biden's appointments. Now, he immediately moved, and this was kind of surprising, he immediately moved to say, I want Merrick Garland as the Attorney General. We learned this, which is, people were pressing for someone perhaps more progressive, person of color, those kinds of things. But this way, he gets to replace Merrick Garland on the D.C. Circuit Appeals Court with someone else, because now he can confirm all of his judges. These only require a majority vote. We got rid of the filibuster on these things, on all judges, including Supreme Court judges. So and they can start filling the courts. Stephen Breyer can retire now from the court. He's 82 or 3 years old, I think, at this point. So seriously, it loosens things, and anybody he wants in his cabinet, he can have now.
So now this is all presuming we get through the chaos and anarchy of today that's happening right now on Capitol Hill. I heard earlier that Mike Pence did sign a letter saying that he would not block certification of Joe Biden's victory. So what is happening right now on Capitol Hill, Andy? Can you see?
I'm watching CNN in the background. They've overrun the Capitol, and they're inside and they're on the steps. I've been a part of many, many demonstrations over the years in my life, but I wouldn't get away with this, I'm sure. Anyway, it's just but again, it was such a relief. It lifts such a burden. I've heard friends say, I feel happy for the first time in like 5 years because of these Senate races. And of course, it's a very narrow margin, and we have a very narrow margin in the House, and it's going to be tough. Got to get a lot done in 2 years, because we don't know what's going to happen in 2 years. Don't forget, the census is going to happen, and redistricting is going to happen, and Republicans still control most of our state legislatures and will be drawing the lines for the House. So it's going to be a tough job holding on to the House. And then in the Senate, there's still a possibility of even adding some seats, but we'll see. Right now, can we be happy for one day or half a day?
Yes, it's much needed, I'm afraid. There's so much bad news. If you actually watch the news, it's enough to drive you quite crazy. So, yes.
Trump has established a fascist party, literally. A violent fascist party. And he's going to be out there, even after he leaves, he's going to be out there with this force. And we've got to do more. What I'm most concerned about is that Biden and Harris, so we need to move on. We don't want division. Well, no, you've got to prosecute this guy. I don't mean they have to prosecute him, but he has to be prosecuted by the state and by the federal government for all of his crimes. Because if there's no accountability, they just keep doing this stuff. There has to be accountability. Anyway. All right.
No kidding. One of the crimes I would like to see him prosecuted for is the new record death toll we have in this country. About 360,000 deaths. The United States has 19% of worldwide deaths, while only having about 4% of the worldwide population.
Merryn, I don't mind telling you, I'm more scared than I've been in a long time because, I've taken a lot of precautions. I don't think I've had this. I've not been tested. But this is the strain that gets around easier is out there. So that's why hospitals are filling up, overflowing. If I get sick with something else, there's not going to be any room for me. Ambulances in California, you got to wait 8 hours for an ambulance to show up. You'll be dead. So, I'm not trying to frighten people, but there it is. And we've got to move fast on these vaccines and everything.
Yeah, it's not much. I'm not seeing much speed. I'm seeing a lot of whoop though with the vaccine rollout. It's not effective apparently. But while we're talking about vaccines, what is your news for the HIV positive folks?
Well, just that. Really, we got the news this week. We had a guest on last week. The fact that People with HIV can tolerate the vaccine, and it works for them. Reginald Thomas Brown was our guest.
There's three different types.
HIV positive in a trial, but
right. What I've learned though is that your doctor would tell you this, though. There are three different types of vaccines in terms of the way they're constructed from particles of the virus that are either dead or inactive or live microorganisms. And the type for HIV positive patients to receive would be the mRNA. Those are the dead virus vaccines such as Moderna and Pfizer, but not the Sputnik 5 from Russia, because wouldn't it be a surprise to you to learn that they did not include in Russia HIV positive people in their trials?
Well, there's so many people that have been excluded from trials, we don't really know how they're going to work on children. There's all kinds of problems, and then, of course, there's of course, looking at this demonstration in Washington with the MAGA crowd, there were those two women on the plane with the MAGA hats on who wouldn't put their masks on. So they had to be removed from the plane. They ended up having to empty the entire plane. And these young women were shouting racial slurs at passengers while they were being filed out. It's so grotesque. And then, we have a picture of this. Well, is this the Trump supporter at Mar-a-Lago, gay Trump supporter?
Yes.
There he is. He's the guy on the left, George Santos, there with his partner. They went to the maskless ball, and their picture ended up in the New York Times to illustrate that they'd had this New Year's Eve party without masks. And without Trump, by the way, where they paid $1,000 apiece. Anyway, the partner got fired from his pharmacy job because the pharmacy looked at it and said, "What the hell are you doing? You're working in a pharmacy."
It amazes me how there are still people who think they can post everything on Instagram and then get upset when it goes public, because everything you post on social media, you no longer own. You have no rights to it whatsoever.
This guy Santos, he claims that he had to leave his home, that the attacks on him are un-American. Some of the other COVID-idiots in attendance, by the way, at that thing were Rudy Giuliani, Representative Matt Gaetz, Vanilla Ice, and the My Pillow guy. Santos ran for Congress, by the way, in New York from the 3rd District, and he lost. And then there's the Republican Congress member who died before he could even take a seat, right? The guy from Louisiana. His name was Luke Letlow, 41. It's a sad story, but he's one of these guys who would not wear a mask, went to rallies, went to functions. Come on. Everybody's got to set a good example here. And then within the community, you've got this gay circuit party organizer, White Party Entertainment, led by Jeffrey Sanker. They wanted to throw a COVID guideline-defying super spreader event in Puerto Vallarta, but Puerto Vallarta said, you can't do it here. So they moved it to another city, and they did it anyway. And they claimed to have complied with restrictions, but you just don't want to do those things at this time. But on a more positive note, in terms of COVID, AIDS activists from the TAG, Treatment Action Group, Peter Staley, Greg Gonsalves, David Barr, Sam Everett. They got Barbara Streisand to give a message to Dr. Fauci on his 80th birthday, which I think was Christmas Eve, and they had a Zoom party with him. Fauci is a big Barbara fan.
I love Dr. Fauci. I really do. He's like a sane voice in a wilderness of madness. I've been hanging on his every word for the past few months.
I agree with you. I also think we need much more aggressive messages getting to people. When I sit here in New York, I watch the health commissioner from the state and the city, and they just, in their suits, they just, very calmly say, wash your hands and wear a mask. And it's got to be something that penetrates people. I work for an agency, I'm on the board of an agency for LGBTQ homeless youth. And one of our board members interviewed them about the vaccine. And most of them don't understand it and are scared of it. So there's going to be a lot of education that's going to need to happen with these kids. They live on the street. I was shocked at what they believed about it. There we are. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, okay, where are we? So when Trump was on that call where he's engaging in sedition and he's trying to give me some more votes, the lawyer who was helping him was this woman named Clayton Mitchell.
Clayton Mitchell, right.
So but he blew her cover. She wasn't supposed to be doing this. Her law firm said, we don't want anybody working on trying to overthrow the presidential election. And she's had to resign from her firm. But she is a famous anti-gay bigot who led a fight to exclude GOP Proud, the gay group, from CPAC. Guy who headed it, Chris Barron, called her a nasty bigot. Anyway, and I subsequently read that one of the reasons she's so bitter is that she apparently had a husband who left her and...
For a man?
Yes.
Oh, of course she did. Boy, oh boy. There's always a reason. But it's good news when they start turning on each other, because this Chris Barron is the founder of LGBT for Trump. If he's calling this woman out, she must be pretty bad, I have to say.
And he regrets that, I think. I mean, I'm not completely up to date. We don't do too many stories on that because I think it's more like a man bites dog story, these gay Republicans. You can correct me, viewers, if you are. But anyway. And then some of the ministers, Franklin Graham resurfaced. He set up his Samaritan's Purse tents in North Carolina. Hadn't been doing anything with them for a while since he took New York and raised so much money. But he's warning that when the Democrats get in, they're going to do gay rights. And yes, they are. And another fundamentalist mega minister, Ravi Zacharias, who died in May, they did a big investigation on him. He was sexually harassing women for years at a day spa that he co-owned. This is a famous, fundamentalist minister. Now they don't know what to do. They think they need to rename the ministry because it's named after him.
Oh, man. Well, shall we keep talking about these wacky Trump appointments? I want to know what you think of Marcus Bachmann. Why won't this man go away? And why will he ever stop gravitating towards the most vulnerable?
Well, presidents do this at the end of their terms. They try to fill up panels and commissions and things with people that are going to live beyond them, and this is going to be a problem for Biden. He's going to come in, and there are going to be all these Trumpites who have been installed and are going to be harder to remove. Well, in this case, Bachmann, who is, Dan Savage says he's an obvious closet case. He's married to Michelle Bachmann, who was a Minnesota representative. And he does conversion therapy. So He's been appointed to the President's Committee for people with intellectual disabilities. Well,
nothing I say on this will come out sounding right. It's just that why at the 11th hour make these quite, I think, rash decisions, especially for vulnerable demographics that will affect them for much of their lives. I think it's highly unethical.
Everything they've done has been unethical, and they're just using this. This is what I always say. Republicans use every lever of power available to them. If Mitch McConnell was going to be the majority leader again, you weren't going to get any Biden judges. He wouldn't have confirmed any of them. They just wouldn't have had hearings on them for 4 years, basically, if they could. That's what it's come down to. That's how horrible it is right now. So that's what we're up against. But I understand what he's doing. He's trying to extend his power, but it's going to be a lot of work for Biden to undo it. Look at the courts. 39% of confirmed appellate judges appointed by Trump harbor anti-LGBT bias and records. Lambda Legal did a big report on this. They said they've been radicalized with alarming speed. Listen to this. 85% of Trump's circuit court appointments nominee are white, 80% men, none were black. 1/3 of the circuit court judges are Trump appointees now. 85% were with the Federalist Society. Now, even with all that, and he's got 1/3 of the Supreme Court, he couldn't win any of these court cases to overturn the election. Can we talk about Can we talk about Biden now instead?
Let's do that. There's been two new appointments, two out gay men, Guatan Raghavan and Stuart Dellery, and they're quite significant positions. I think Guatan is working in, he's a deputy in charge of personnel, and Stuart is deputy counsel to the president.
Yeah, Raghavan had been Representative Jayapal, the Congress member's chief of staff, and worked for the Biden transition. He'd also been a liaison to the LGBT community and the Asian American community for Obama. Mm-hmm. And Stuart Dellery, we remember, because he's going to be deputy counsel to the president. But under Obama, he was acting associate attorney general, the number 3 position, the highest ranking out gay in the Justice Department history. He personally argued the appeals court cases for the administration, challenging the Defense of Marriage Act, and also defended subsidies in the Affordable Care Act. So he's a really distinguished lawyer as well. So that was the Windsor case. Yeah. And Nancy Pelosi was reelected speaker this week, and it was a tough fight. She says this will be her last term. Mm-hmm. She got a bunch of rules changes enacted. Did you read about this?
No, but I did see her house was vandalized, which was not nice.
No, as was McConnell's.
Yes.
But I assume that's the MAGA people mad at them. But Nancy Pelosi, they're using now gender neutral language in the House rules. So we're not even going to say his or her or any kind of gendered language in these rules. And of course, this made the Republican heads explode. Oh, why are we doing this? That kind of thing. Kevin McCarthy called it stupid. He's the House Republican leader. But the Virginia state budget is coming out, and it's going to let transgender and non-binary people use Medicaid for their gender treatment and things.
As they should.
Right. All right. Now, we have a lot of sad news this week.
We do. We have lost this year. This year and last year, but it seems the turning of the year has seen us lose many good people.
Right, and I'll start with Len Keller, she was a Black lesbian photographer and founder of the Bay Area Lesbian Archives, documenting lesbian history in San Francisco. She died on December 16th at 69 of cancer in Oakland. The co-curators of the archive said she was a proud butch lesbian, determined to preserve and protect lesbian history in the Bay Area. Her work centered on, quote unquote, queer Black women and people of color in general. Her exhibition, Gender Warriors, highlighted the violence and discrimination facing masculine presenting women. That was one of her things. And another was called Fierce Sisters, and it displayed 4 decades of her work. A virtual memorial is planned for January 31st. Go to Bay Area Lesbian Archives Facebook page for details of that. Okay, and you can tell us about, we put up a picture, by the way, of a Black lesbian contingent in the San Francisco Pride Parade that Len Keller took. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You tell us about Kim.
Yes, Kim Chernin, we lost 80 years of age. She did die from complications of COVID. Her wife, Renata Stendhal, released this information. Kim was an incredible person. She was the daughter of a labor and communist activist called Rose Chernin. She went on to study psychoanalysis and spirituality, getting her doctorate in those subjects. And she wrote one of the first books which dealt with female body image and dysmorphia and the phenomenon of eating disorders that was sweeping American campuses in the early 80s.
That was called The Obsession, Reflections of the Tyranny of Slenderness.
Yes, and prior to this book, I don't think anyone had given any deep thought to the way that culture and power structures construct women's ideas of themselves, and how that lack of power was often manifested in eating disorders, which is fascinating.
Yes, this was 1980.
1980, which was
before Diana and her, anorexia and bulimia and all those kinds of things came to the fore.
That's right. That was about 83, 84 that started to come out. I remember hearing about a girl on my campus when I was an undergraduate who died of an eating disorder, and we were completely shocked. None of us had ever heard of what this was. We didn't know what this was, and it was the mid-80s. I first discovered Kim Chernon's work, though, through her wife, Renata Stendhal. They co-wrote a book together. They're fascinating women. They met in a Paris cafe in the 80s, and they got together and eventually married in 2014. And they used to read and help write each other's work. And this book was very cheekily called, they co-wrote this, Lesbian Marriage, a Love and Sex Forever Kit. And this was a lot of fun. I think it came out of them celebrating their marriage. So what a loss. I mean, they were role models to many women.
And by the way, Kim was a COVID death, I believe.
She was, yeah.
She was. So a tremendous loss. Okay. And now I really want to hear about your friend, Lois Sasson.
Yes, and this is a very hard one for me to deliver, and if I don't make too much sense, please blame it on my own personal grief. Lois Sasson, who pictured here with her long-term partner, Lesley Gore, who is deceased. Lois was a friend of mine who I actually met through a circle of friends, through some extraordinary women. Unfortunately, Lois passed on December the 30th in Manhattan, also from COVID. It's a terrible loss that many women all across the world are going to mourn. She was one of the wisest, sharpest, toughest, tenderest, most funny people I've ever met, deeply caring, deeply intelligent, stylish, sassy. She had a jewelry brand called LD Sass, which was named after her own name, but it was because she was so damn sassy and full of life. It's going to be very hard for me and hundreds of women to realize that she's gone. Many of the achievements she made were in the background and under the radar. She was a very generous philanthropist and a very dedicated activist. And one of the things she instilled in the women who admired her was the need to stand up for our beliefs and to fight. Right up until the end, she was really working as a volunteer for Joe Biden and the election. And even when she was hospitalized, she was texting me that as a journalist, it was my duty to help get rid of Trump. I just, if I think of her now, I hope that she's in heaven at a fantastic dinner party of incredible women, incredible feminists, incredible artists with fantastic food and wine, like Judy Chicago's The Dinner Party. I think that's what she would like us to think of her.
I was very surprised to read, and of course researching her for this, because Lesley, came out, and they weren't so much of a public couple for the most part. But when Lesley died, I read that Lesley's estate was very modest. She left it all to Lois, but it was very modest. I mean, so they stuck together they were together forever, weren't they?
Oh, I think the relationship was about 40-something years long. And yes, one of the last things Lois was doing was working on a documentary film about Lesley and the untold story of her life and of her most popular songs. I hope that work continues on that documentary and we get to see more of those two. They were special women.
It's our party and we'll cry if we want to. Lesley was a guest on the show, and if they're going to complete the documentary and they'd like to use some of our footage, we would welcome that from that interview, because it was a wonderful interview.
That is good to know. That is good to know.
Okay. All right. Ben, everybody has heard the name Pierre Cardin.
Yes.
Right. who was sort of 98 years old. He was sort of a brander as much as a fashion designer. I mean, he was famous for his out there designs. He always wanted to sort of surprise people or shock people with fashion. Mod chic, they called it in the 1970s. And he self-identified as mostly gay, but he had a 4-year affair with
Jean Moreau. Who wouldn't have a 4-year affair with Jean Moreau? Anybody
had a 4-year affair with Jean Moreau. I don't care what if it got me off the show, she was so wonderful.
She's a French icon. I mean, French isn't just a nationality, it's a sexuality. You do realize that.
Well, we've been reading about some funny stuff going on in France with some of those intellectuals these days. But anyway, in terms of Pierre Cardin, his long-term business partner and life partner was fashion designer Andre Oliver, who died in 1993. And Cardin always took his bows with Oliver at all the fashion shows. So, I mean, I wasn't particularly aware of stuff that he did with all his money for the LGBTQ community, but he was out there with Monsieur Oliver. All right, next on our list. Oh, this was really kind of a surprise. Marc DAmico, who played Mouse in the original Tales of the City, which was originally a PBS series based on Armistead Maupin's books back in the 1993.
Wasn't he perfect in that role? He had the loveliest face. I mean, he really was Mouse, wasn't he?
Yes, he was Mouse. He died of pneumonia at the age of 55. He lived in Oxfordshire in England. He co-starred on stage in the 1992 National Theatre production of Angels in America. Before Angels in America came here, it played at a little theater in London at the National Theatre, the Small House. I saw it actually back then, and he received an Olivier Award nomination for that performance. So he was a stage actor, and he was also in the Broadway production of An Inspector Calls, another British import, back in 1994. And by the way, in Angels in America, he played Lewis, for those of you who were wondering. Marc DAmico, gone too soon.
He was only 55 years of age.
Okay, and now we're off to Scotland.
Oh.
We're looking at John Hine, 63, the founding father of Edinburgh Pride, or chair of Pride Scotia, 25 years ago. He died on December 23rd. He was also part of the decades-long campaign for LGBT rights in Scotland. A friend described him as a very kind soul who hid behind being a grump. He was the former editor also of Scots Magazine, so one of our colleagues. All right, and then I want to pay tribute to Michael Slade. I just heard about this last night. Michael had been on the show with Kevin Spiritus. They developed this digital series called After Forever. Have you seen it?
No.
Check it out on Amazon. It's, they're like 10-minute little segments, and you get to, well, the whole pretense of it is Kevin plays a character whose husband has died at the outset of the show, but then keeps being a character talking to him in the kitchen and everything while he's trying to date and move on with his life and all that kind of stuff. But Michael was the co-creator of it and the producer and writer of it, and he died after a long battle with cancer. The series really was a unique gay love story. I thought it was terrific, and it did win Daytime Emmy Awards for the digital field. He worked right up until the end, including on an upcoming longer film called Riley's Unforgettable School Project, where there's this kid Riley who's being raised by gay guys, but the guy I mentioned who died, the character who died, was his another father figure to him, in addition to having two fathers, and that's going to be on Amazon. But Michael was also a guy. Where did he come from? He wrote daytime soaps: One Life to Live, Days of Our Lives, Passions, and Another World. So all of those soap operas. And then we learned of another transgender death. Do you have this?
Yes, it's a very, I don't have much intel on that. The death of Kimberly Patricia Cope, whose body was found at Athens, Georgia, parking lot at 6 in the morning, I think, on December the 27th. She was 40 years old. The police are not indicating any trauma or foul play at this stage. But if it is a homicide, she would be the 30th Black transgender woman to have been killed in 2020.
And the 50th transgender or non-binary person. As you say, most of them are Black trans women of color. It's just been a terrible year. We will continue to draw attention to it until more is done for transgender people, like what they're doing in Virginia, like giving them access to care, gender care, under Medicaid. And of course, as I keep repeating, if you want to do something for these folks, don't just have vigils for them. Education, jobs,
housing.
There you go. There you go. All right. Okay. International news. Or unless you have something else.
I was surprised to find out that Greece has appointed its first out gay minister in a centre-right government. I mean, what's going on? There's been a reshuffle of the ministers, but this is good news. This is Nicholas Yatromonolakis. He's 44 and he is now going to be the Deputy Minister of Culture. What a good gig, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have that that right-wing government, I believe, in Slovakia.
Yeah.
Right, where the woman leader of the country is
Ana Brnabić in Serbia. I think you're thinking of.
Serbia. Thank you very much. What would I do without you?
I don't know. What would anybody do without
I'm glad you're here. If I don't get corrected on the show, I get corrected later. Then there is the Queen. You know, the Queen's does this honors list. It's endless. But one of the big honors this year went to lesbian activist. We've talked about her before, Angela Eagle.
That's right. She's now going to be Dame Eagle. What a cool name, huh?
It is. She was the sitting female member of parliament to come out, and has been, they call her a Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire. She's a Labour Party chair of the National Policy Forum. She has a twin sister, Maria Eagle, who I don't know if she's a lesbian, but who was also a member of parliament. Anyway, Angela came out in 1997 when not as many people were doing it in government, and congratulations to her.
Yeah, she's done the hard yard. She joined the Labour Party at the tender age of 17. So, well done her.
Right.
What about Uganda? We had an item from Uganda, wasn't it? Nicholas Apio has been arrested.
Yes. Do you want to talk about it?
Well, I don't know. I don't have much information. I'm wondering whether or not these charges aren't trumped up. I mean, he was down having dinner with a bunch of lawyers.
To Uganda, he's controversial. We're talking about Nicholas Opio. He was a leading lawyer for LGBT rights, and they're trying to get him on a money laundering charge. It's all trumped up. I use the word advisedly. The charges are baseless. He's known for defending the most vulnerable members of society. This gets you in trouble. He was seized in Kampala with 3 other lawyers from his group, which is called Chapter 4 Uganda, which condemned it was a brutal abduction. It wasn't just like, you're coming with us. They roughed them up. The United States ambassador, sent there by Trump, called the arrest troubling. Opio has faced death threats for defending the rights of LGBT people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And let's go to your old part of the world, New Zealand.
My neck of the woods, New Zealand legislator Ricardo Menendez March gave his maiden address in his maiden speech in Parliament, in which he said, "Be gay, do crime."
Well, first of all, he describes himself as a transgressive queer socialist. Can I read his quote?
Do it.
Okay. So this is the parliament where, and he's from the Green Party, this is the parliament from which there are 10%, right, are LGBTQ.
Yes.
Most in the world. So here in his speech, he goes, "I want to start by acknowledging everybody who has to lie to work and come to survive. In our queer community, he said, there's a saying that he loves that goes, be gay, do crime. And to me, it means to be transgressive, to acknowledge the decision makers who created the rules that criminalize our survival and our existence. And his speech was met with a big round of applause.
Very good.
You know? So, and hugs. He got hugs too, although I don't know, under COVID. Oh, actually, New Zealand is doing terrifically. I guess they can hug each other.
They can. They have. I think they have officially eliminated the virus. So.
Pretty much, and Taiwan has done a terrific job too. I mean, nobody is completely out of the woods, but they're doing terrific jobs there. It can be done. We're doing a terrible job. Again, I still have CNN on the background while we're taping, and you see people overrunning the Capitol without masks on, and they're called. It's quite the insurrection, encouraged by Trump. All right, some other international news. Bunch of things happening in India.
Yes.
They have a new policy on science and technology that calls for 30% women and spousal benefits for same-sex couples. They had a hearing that the courts are, we are hearing that the courts in India are primed to bring in marriage equality.
They are. And do you know why? Because ever since the passage of the repeal of Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code of 1860, the linchpin of that repeal was that it was unconstitutional to the freedom of Indians. So what they're saying is this has set a precedent now that there are a bunch of, I think there's at least 2 sets of couples have now filed petitions with the Delhi High Court, and the Kerala High Court, basically saying that the fact they cannot get married is also unconstitutional. So
I seem to be sympathetic. By the way, they have a 31-person Supreme Court in India. Now, it is the most, it's about to overtake China as the most populous country in the world, I think. So, yeah, they're making progress. And the government also drafted a 5-year plan for transgender welfare, what we were talking about before.
And it can't be that hard, but I think the fact that there is an estimated 500,000 Hijra people in India, it is a substantial and visible and recognised part of the population. So I think at this point, not to draft something for their welfare is absolute craven negligence. So I hope it goes through without a whisper.
And what did you think about what happened in Argentina this week? They legalized abortion. It's a landmark victory for the growing human rights movement. The vote in the Senate was closely watched, 38-29. The influence of the Roman Catholic Church, my old outfit, is waning. People are tired of it. But in Egypt, they're stepping up persecutions of gay people. And, you know, sodomy is not against the law in Egypt, but they find a way to arrest you. So they're using laws against cybercrime and online morality laws, and they're pursuing harsher sentences and securing ironclad convictions. So all this is about scapegoating. It's a government that's, you know, wants to appease its fundamentalist wing, and that's what they do. They pick us. It's really rough. But Japan, people are changing their gender registrations at a record pace.
Isn't that interesting?
They only allowed this 15 years ago, and now it's really accelerating. And I think it's the internet. I mean, people learning about what's going on all over the world and saying, this is who I am, and I'm going to assert it. I'm going to assert who I am. Okay. All right. Let's see. In the Cayman Islands, a gay couple won the right to have their marriage performed in Ireland, recognized in the Cayman Islands, which doesn't have same-sex marriage, but this is just for immigration purposes. And the Constitutional Court, you know, said the decision. Oh no, I'm sorry. This was a decision of the Residency Board that was overturned by the Immigration Appeals Tribunal, and they said their human rights under the Constitution had been violated. So that could lead to same-sex marriage there. Mm-hmm. In Switzerland, the legislature voted for marriage equality. We told you about that. But if opponents want to stop it, they have until April to get 50,000 signatures to put it on the ballot. So I hope that doesn't happen. Those things are always ugly.
Yes.
And I left out a couple of local stories. Can I go back to them? We have time.
Yeah, we've got time. Let's do it.
And maybe you have this picture, Rich. My editor, Paul Schindler stepped down as the editor of the Gay City News. He'd been at the helm since 2002, editing the Gay City News out of New York. He had worked on LGNY, the gay paper, before that, from 1997. And he says he's going to continue to write, but he's turning it over to a young guy named Matt Tracy, who's very energetic, who's terrific, and Tat Bellamy, who is the new digital editor and reporter. So things are changing over there. I do write for Gay City News. If they'll still have an old white cisgendered man, I'm available. And how about Housing Works, where they approved a union? The Housing Works AIDS agency, service organization, 88% of the employees voted to join the union, unionize. They become members of the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, which is led by an out gay leader, Stuart Applebaum. It's been a 2-year effort. We've got a couple of coming outs in sports.
Mm-hmm.
The American rugby player Devin Ibanez has come out to the world after long being open with his circle, and his boyfriend Fergus Wade is an English medical student. And in the District of Columbia, the pro wrestler, I wish I had a picture. We have too many pictures. Mr. Grimm, his name is, came out as pansexual and said he long struggled with his identity, but he was encouraged by the women's world champion, Nyla Rose. I don't know her, but she encouraged him to come out. And here's a decision from the New York State Appellate Division. Wait for this. They ruled that the false imputation of homosexuality, calling someone gay, is no longer defamatory per se. In the old days, you quote unquote accused someone of being gay, or you said that they were gay, then you could sue them for defamation, because it was such an awful thing. But the court said, well, it's not such an awful thing. They can get married, civil rights, all these kinds of things. So, and this was a case in a church where the pastor wanted to get rid of this board member, and he said, he's been watching gay porn on the computers. And then so whatever. He brought a defamation case, and they said, we are not suffering any damages. And he doesn't have to keep you employed anyway. So that is progress. That it's no longer considered defamation. I mean, it's like if I said, if I referred to you and I said, she's Italian. Well, I mean, maybe if you weren't, you couldn't come back and say, how dare you, but with gayness, lesbianism, etc., you could. So that is progress. Okay. Some entertainment news?
Sure, why not? Now, I've got a couple of movies that are coming down the pipeline. I don't know anything about World to Come, so maybe you need to talk about that one. I just noticed in the press release it's produced by Christine Vachon and Casey Affleck, strangely, and it's a lesbian movie. Who knows? Not sure I like the Afflecks involved.
Say the name again. Say the name again.
World to Come.
There is so much. Do you have any other ones that you want to tell us about?
I do. I have one that I've seen recently that I really liked, actually. It's called Two of Us, and the French title is, of course, Deux. It is coming out on demand and in theatres on February the 5th, but the trailer is available to have a look at now. And why I really think this one should be given a heads up is it is France's official submission for the Best International Feature Film at the 93rd Academy Awards, and it's extremely good. It is about...
Before I forget, send me the link to the trailer, and we'll send that out with our email. And if anybody wants to be on our email list, go to gayusatv.org and sign up for our list there. You'll get a note from GoDaddy saying you really want to be on this list. And if you say yes, you'll be getting weekly emails that'll tell you all about it, including a link to Deux.
Exactly, Two of Us. One of the reasons it's such a pleasure, look, it's a very heartbreaking movie. It's a sad movie. It's about two older lesbians who have kept their relationship a secret, and they're planning their retirement. and the kind of more sensible one of them, shall we say, puts some pressure on the other one that it's time to tell the kids what's really happening. But it doesn't go well. And really the results of that is
How old are the kids?
what the films, they're grown adults. This is a French movie. This is a movie with subtitles, but I think it's a beautiful movie. The performances by the two actresses are absolutely superb. Barbara Sukova, one of the great European actresses. I worked a lot with Margareta von Trotter, Martine Chevalier. They're really quite terrific. One of my favorite things about films where I get excited is if it's something I haven't seen before, and I haven't seen this kind of relationship depicted on screen with the nuances in this way. So it's highly recommended viewing.
Great. I look forward to it. And do you know where we can see it?
It will be available, I think, across digital platforms on February the 5th. So I'm pretty sure it'll pop up on one of our favorite streaming services, and you just have to rent it.
I hope so.
Yeah.
A lot of you know the out actor John Barrowman, who was on Doctor Who, and he's returning to Doctor Who. And he says, of course, the next Doctor could be gay. You know, they change who plays the Doctor, and they change a lot about the character of the Doctor. I'm not a big Doctor Who fan, but I like John Barrowman quite a bit. And then Jonathan Bailey is someone I don't know him, but I've seen a lot of his work. He's one of the stars of Bridgerton. Tried to watch one episode. It's the new costume drama, set in one of these period pieces on Netflix. But he says that in terms of coming out, now as an actor, the people who discouraged me the most from coming out were other gay people in the industry. Oh, no, you don't want to do that. It's going to ruin your career. And I do go through this with knowing actor friends. It is a very tough decision because you're worried about not getting certain roles once you come out. Other people like Russell Tovey, who came out very early on, said, and at first he was like, oh my God, everybody just thinks of me as gay. But it's gotten him a lot of work, and it's gotten him, and he still plays non-gay roles as well. They let him, but he does that. But anyway, Jonathan Bailey, he's also been featured on Fleabag, and he was terrific. I saw the West End revival of Company, where they cast the lead role of Bobby. This is the 1970, I think, Stephen Sondheim musical. The role of Bobby was played by a woman in London, and it was supposed to open here. It didn't because of the COVID crisis. It also features Patti LuPone, but they change. There's a couple that is worried about getting married, and they sing a funny song, and he was one of them, and he was so terrific in that, and he won an Olivier Award for that. But because they changed it to a gay couple from a non-gay couple. So anyway, I hope that does open on Broadway whenever Broadway comes back. When do you think everything is coming back?
I don't think anything is going to come back until we have achieved herd immunity with the vaccine. So I think that's probably September next year. September of next year. I mean, sorry, it could be September this year, but I think some people are saying it could be, it depends. If we're looking at, I don't know if Broadway has a strategy with opening the houses again at say 50% or 25%. Yeah. I don't think so. Not with the virus spreading the way it is. You just can't. It's really got to be about the vaccine, and we have to see the infection rate reach a certain low point before I think. I'm completely horrified by how slow the pace of injections are going. My brother got one because he lives in a veterans home, and basically not a nursing home, but that kind of a place. He'll probably outlive us all, but when I'm 67, when am I on the list? They haven't even gotten to the 75-year-olds in New York, whereas in Florida, they're inoculating. But it's just going so slowly. It has to be, they called it warp speed, and it's so slow. It has to happen fast. We've got to get, New York says they're now going to set up all kinds of places all over the city, 24 hours a day, starting to inject people. But it's just so, there was such hope when they found these things, and now they can't get them out. And some of them are going to expire.
and go to waste. It's just appalling and very depressing, since we've been so good for so long and avoided this damn thing, and here we are.
Well, I hope it makes people in this country reevaluate their priorities. That the slogan "Live free or die" really can mean die if you're not careful, and I don't think that's what people really mean, and I don't think that's what they really want. But without a certain kind of infrastructure, it's absolute chaos. What's happening? Is the Capitol in flames yet?
Well, they have smashed. There is one of these characters sitting in the chair in the House chamber right now that I'm looking at, and they're smashing windows, and there are guns drawn in the House chamber right now. I mean, everybody will know about this by the time they watch this show, but this is fascism. This is like, I mean, I don't want to call it, the burning of the Reichstag, but this is fascism that you are seeing in action. I mean, and where is the condemnation? Where is the law and order condemnation from the Republicans for all these characters? I mean, this has to end, but it's not going to end until you have accountability in this country for the crimes of these people, whether it's the crimes of not taking care of each other in terms of these maskless demonstrations and rallies, and all, of course, the election crimes of Donald Trump and his attempt to have a coup. He's blessing all of this stuff. It's just appalling. And while we're distracted with this, the Justice Department, I forgot to tell this story. The Justice Department is trying to end the idea of disparate impact, which is a big thing in civil rights, where they're saying if you're going to sue for discrimination, you have to prove that you were discriminated against personally and for your status. You can't just look at the fact, oh my God, there are no black people here at this 300-person office, and that would be disparate impact. Obviously, you don't like black people and you're discriminatory, but they are trying to embed things to end that thing at the Justice Department. And there was a big story in the Times about this week. They didn't go through any process to do it, and we will be stuck with this thing for a while until they can pry it out and undo it.
Well, President Trump called for this to happen today. The events of today, he actually called for them. So I think that's surely a criminal charge. I
mean, he should have been impeached right after the phone call to the people in Georgia. He should have been impeached immediately, because what you have to do, and people think this sounds naive, you have to, we're down to our last minute. When you impeach, you can add a clause that says, may never hold office in the United States again. They don't always do that with impeachments, but they could do it to him to get rid of him. And I realize that doesn't end Trumpism, but it would be the end of him in terms of public office.
Well, stay safe, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, Merryn, it's so good to have you, and you added so much, and I appreciate your sharing about your friend, Lois, and we miss all these people, and we miss each other, being with each other. We do have 25 seconds. Next week, by the way, Ann is away for a bit. Next week, Chris Cooper is going to be the co-host of the show. And you're coming back on the 27th?
I believe so, yes.
You're scheduled to do so. So maybe we'll get Ann in between, because you were scheduled for that for a while, and we're down. So bye-bye, and we'll see you next week.